For Creamer Media's Engineering News, I'm Paige Muller. Joining me today in studio is FairPlay's Lebogang Chaka to discuss the impact of trade dumping on South Africa's sugar industry. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, it's a pleasure.
Please now just take a moment to explain to our viewers what exactly trade dumping is.
So the definition of the WTO, when it talks about trading, it means that the products that have been produced in a particular country and a particular market are being produced at a lower cost, and in terms of being sold outside of their home country, they're sold at a lesser price on the world market. So for instance, we have countries like subsidized in terms of sugar production, the countries such as Brazil, Europe, and so forth, where they have such great subsidies that when they can actually export their sugar or chicken, it is at a lesser price than what they would sell it on their home market. So that would be considered dumping. So it's not straight dumping where the government would say that they're subsidizing their farmers to go and export, but in the agricultural subsidies that they provide for their farmers, that creates dumping.
Okay, and in South Africa's sugar industry in particular, what effect is trade dumping currently having on our sugar industry?
So we're seeing a lot of effects in terms of the sugar industry, in terms of the fact that our sugar industry used to produce something like 2.5 billion tons of sugar, and now it's just under 2 million at about 1.7 tons. And when we look at the sugar industry as a whole, it contributes to about 14 billion of our GDP. So, and then further to that, it's indirectly and directly, there's about 1 million jobs that depend on the sugar industry, it's estimated. So when you look at sugar dumping, it means that this retraction from 2.5 billion to 1.7, then those are jobs, and the first people to feel the brunt of this is the small scale farmers, because obviously they, this is directly going towards their livelihood, So as a movement, as FairPlay, we said we cannot sit back and see this happen. And that's why we are out here trying to advocate for, predatory trade to stop, and for us, we work across with government, with unions, with the farmers themselves, looking at some of these predatory trade practices, and also looking at, engagement with the AU, BRICS and so forth, as much as we can to find a solution. So it's not about us attacking, but it's about us working with the different industry groups, with the different government groups, with whoever, to ensure that we can actually come up with a solution to ensure that, South African jobs are kept. So our founder of the movement, Francois Bird, always talks about the fact that, we need to ensure that what we're doing, we mustn't forget the cause. It is about the vulnerable. It's about being the voice for the vulnerable, the poor South Africans. And we look at things like aid, the EU gives us so much aid, right? But they're destroying, when we look at the fact that they're going to, open up the floodgates, that will be destroying the livelihood, We look at BRICS and, we look at all these BRICS summits where there's all these, lovely trade relations between the countries and so forth, and they want to grow the countries. But we have a country like Brazil that's unfortunately dumping on the market. So we need to have those conversations to say, how is it that you are helping us, but also destroying us? So that's the effect that it has.
Okay, so now obviously we've heard a lot about political will, and we've heard President Cyril Ramaphosa mention that we need to prioritize our local industries, but there seems to be a lot of talk and not a lot of action. Now, FairPlay is organizing a summit. Could you tell us a little bit more about that summit, when you're kind of planning on holding it, that sort of thing?
So we're planning on holding our summit in February. What we're trying to do at the summit is really come together and once again come in solution. And we're still in the planning phases of it, but our initial thoughts around the summit is it will look at jobs. So we have a number of coalitions with unions. For instance, we've organized marches where we stand in solidarity with our fellow South Africans, and we're pushing to say that, protect South African jobs. So we want to have a panel about that, where we discuss jobs, where we'll see trade unions, government come into place, where we'll see private sector, we will see the industry itself talking about this, And then we're also looking towards having panels around the financing itself, because when we study the sugar industry and how other countries have been able to diversify, we really see that there's a strong element of subsidization. But through our research, we found, and I mean, this is public knowledge, that our fiscus, there is not enough money in this fiscus. But we are also challenging that notion and saying that we know that there were way more billions that were brought in through the sugar tax. So why not take that and reinvest it into the sugar industry? So those are the kind of conversations that we're going to be having from an expert panel perspective, from experts in the industry as well. We're also going to be inviting government itself, whether it's National Treasury, the Department of Energy, to engage us, to dispel some of these myths, to say, how do we take it forward? Then we'll also look at it in terms of, inspired obviously by President Ramaphosa, who from the private sector can also come in and invest in this sector to ensure that there is some sort of assistance. And also, looking at it from, going back, nonetheless, Brazil, has managed to diversify from biofuels to, successfully to ethanol, going back and saying, how did these countries, Zimbabwe, for instance, is already blending its ethanol? How did you do it? So, that's those steps, that the input might be different. For instance, they would do their ethanol from molasses, but we would do it differently in South Africa, but we just, understand the process. And then we want to take the Action Summit towards some sort of workshop where we can lay out a roadmap and so forth, and we can, get commitment and from, whether it's government, private sector, to diversify our sugar industry, because, when we look at the livelihoods and already the effect that is happening in the sugar industry, we don't want to end up in a situation where we're like Ghana or Senegal or Cameroon or other African counterparts, where they've been so affected by dumping in terms of their poultry industries that they import everything. So we're here saying, what, we need to find a way as a country, as a nation, within the different bodies and so forth, where we just really come together, join hands, and say, what else can we do, and ensure that, as the ordinary South African still has a job. We want to make sure that that child in the rural area whose parents are in, farm a sugarcane, we want to ensure that they still have a livelihood.
Okay, so when will this summit be, and what exactly are you going to term the summit so that people can find you?
Okay, so everybody can go on our FairPlay website to find out the exact dates. For now, we're still planning it and looking at it towards February, and we will make a formal announcement once we, have a date, and we will. Everything will be on our summit. on our website, and you can contact us on info@fairplaymovement.org. Our website is www.fairplaymovement.org. And, if there's any interested speakers, if there's any, people out there that would like to, attend and participate, we'd welcome those. Obviously, you'd go through a registration process. It's on a first place, first person come basis. And you'll get a response whether you can attend or not. And already we've gotten so much interest, but there are other key stakeholders that might be interested in the summit. We do welcome that, because FairPlayment is a movement. It's a movement for our people. It's a movement for the nation, and we wouldn't want to exclude anyone. And obviously on the day and so forth, we will try and put together technology, whether it's via streaming and so forth, if people can't physically make it to the venue. But we want to make it as such that it is really a joint summit, and that everybody's voice is heard, and that after the voices are heard, there's an actual action.
That's so nice. It sounds like such an inclusive event. Well, that's everything from me. Thank you so much for joining us. That was Lebogang Chaka, a member of FairPlay, telling us about the effects of sugar dumping on South Africa's sugar industry.